The day I became one of the richest men in Detroit, I was standing in line at Murphy's Corner store on 8 Mile Road, holding a crumpled lottery ticket in my sweaty palm while my stomach growled from skipping lunch again to save those $5. The numbers on that ticket would change everything, but not in the way most people would think. Because winning $162 million in the Powerball taught me the most painful lesson of my life. Money doesn't reveal who people truly are, it reveals who they've always been, and sometimes that truth can destroy you from the inside out. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Stay with me until the end of this story and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from, that way I'll know how far my words are reaching. Thank you. Hello, my name is Marcus, and I'm 52 years old. 6 months ago, my life split into two completely different realities, and I've been living in both of them ever since. In one reality, I'm still Marcus Washington, the guy who fixes transmissions at Rodriguez Auto Shop on Corktown, drives a beat-up 2003 Chevy Silverado with 240,000 miles on it, and lives in the same two-bedroom house on the east side that my grandmother left me 15 years ago. In that reality, I still wake up at 5:30 a.m., make instant coffee because the good stuff is too expensive, and count every dollar before I spend it. But in the other reality, the one that only I know about, I'm worth $162 million after taxes, and I could buy that auto shop, the entire block it sits on, and probably half the neighborhood without even feeling it in my bank account. The crazy part? I chose to keep living in that first reality, and that choice led me down a path that would expose every relationship in my life for what it really was. It started on a Tuesday evening in March. I remember it was Tuesday because that's when my supervisor, Mike, always schedules the overtime shifts, and I had just finished rebuilding the engine on a 2015 Ford Explorer that had been giving me hell all week. My hands were still black with grease, my back was aching from being hunched over that engine bay for 10 hours straight, and all I wanted was to grab a cold beer, some hot food, and maybe catch the Pistons game if I could stay awake long enough. I stopped at Murphy's like I always do. It's this little corner store run by an elderly Arab man named Hassan who's been there since the 80s. Hassan knows everybody in the neighborhood, remembers what brand of cigarettes you smoke, what lottery numbers you always play, and he'll let you slide on $1 or $2 if you're short and he knows you're good for it. That Tuesday, I was feeling lucky, or maybe just desperate. My rent was due in 3 days, my truck needed new brakes that I couldn't afford, and my mother had called earlier asking if I could help with her electricity bill. I bought my usual, a Mega Millions ticket with the same 5 numbers I'd been playing for 7 years, numbers that meant something to me, my grandmother's birthday, the day my son was born, the address of the house I grew up in. But that day, something made me buy a second ticket, a Powerball quick pick. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way the afternoon light was coming through Murphy's dirty windows, or maybe it was Hassan joking about how I was due for some good luck. I handed him my last $10 and walked out with those 2 tickets, not knowing that one of them would make me richer than I had ever dreamed, and lonelier than I had ever feared. 3 days later, I was eating a microwave dinner and watching the late news when they announced the Powerball numbers. I wasn't even paying attention at first, I was thinking about how I was going to tell my landlord I'd be late with the rent again. But something made me look up at the screen, and that's when I saw them, 7, 23, 35, 51, 69, and the Powerball 18. I stared at those numbers for a full minute before I reached for the ticket in my wallet. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold it steady. 7-23-35-51-69, Powerball 18. Perfect match. I sat there in my living room, staring at that ticket, and I swear I could hear my heartbeat echoing off the walls. The news anchor was saying something about no winner being announced yet, about the jackpot rolling over if no one came forward, but his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I looked at the ticket again, then at the TV, then back at the ticket. The numbers didn't change. The first thing I did, and I'm not proud of this, was laugh. Not a happy laugh, but this weird, bitter sound that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Because of course this would happen to Marcus Washington, the guy who couldn't catch a break if it fell from the sky. Of course I would win $162 million on the same week I was about to lose my apartment. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, holding that ticket, thinking about what this meant. I thought about calling my brother Jerome, who always said I was wasting my money on lottery tickets. I thought about calling my daughter Keisha, who was struggling to pay for her nursing school. I thought about calling my mother, who had sacrificed everything to raise 4 kids by herself and deserved to never worry about money again. But I didn't call anyone. Instead, I did something that would haunt me for months. I decided to wait. Not because I wasn't grateful, not because I didn't want to share the blessing, but because something in the back of my mind whispered a question that I couldn't ignore. If I was broke, desperate, and needed help, who in my family would really be there for me? The more I thought about it, the more that question grew into an idea, and that idea grew into a plan that would either bring my family closer together or tear us apart forever. I decided I was going to find out who really loved me, not the idea of what I might be able to do for them someday, but me, Marcus, the man who worked with his hands, who struggled to make ends meet, who had more heart than money. I decided to test them. The next morning, I called in sick to work, the first time I'd done that in 3 years, and drove to the Michigan Lottery office in Lansing. I wore my most beat-up clothes, the ones with permanent grease stains and holes in the knees, and I carried that ticket in a manila envelope like it was made of glass. The lottery officials were professional but excited. Apparently, I was only the 3rd person in Michigan history to win a jackpot that size. They explained the options: take the full amount over 30 years, or take the lump sum of $162 million after taxes. I took the lump sum. They asked if I wanted to do a press conference, hold up one of those giant checks, get my picture in the paper. I said no. They asked if I was sure. Most winners want to celebrate, they said. I told them I was sure. What I didn't tell them was that I wasn't ready to celebrate yet. I had work to do first. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, one across town where no one knew me. I kept my regular account at the credit union and made sure everything looked exactly the same from the outside. I kept going to work, kept driving my old truck, kept living in my grandmother's house. To everyone around me, I was still the same Marcus who counted quarters for gas money and bought the generic brand cereal. But inside, I was planning something that would either heal my family or destroy it. The plan was simple, maybe cruel, but I needed to know the truth. I was going to tell each member of my family that I was in serious financial trouble, deeper than I'd ever been, and I needed their help. Not a lot of money, just enough to see who would step up when Marcus Washington had nothing to offer in return. I started with my brother Jerome. Jerome is 2 years older than me, and he's always acted like those 2 years made him the family expert on everything. He works for the city as a building inspector, makes decent money, owns a nice house in Southfield, and never lets any of us forget it. Jerome's the one who always has advice about what I should do with my life, how I should spend my money, why I'm still single at 52. Jerome's the one who said I was stupid for buying lottery tickets when I should be putting that money into a savings account. I called him on a Saturday morning, when I knew he'd be home drinking coffee and reading the news on his tablet. I put on my most worried voice and told him I was in trouble. "Jerome," I said, "I need to talk to you about something serious. Can you come over?" He sighed into the phone, that same sigh he's been giving me since we were kids. "What now, Marcus? You lose another job?" "No, man, it's not work. It's complicated. I really need you to come over." An hour later, Jerome was sitting in my living room, looking around like he was cataloging everything I owned to see what might be worth something. He was wearing his usual weekend uniform, khakis, polo shirt, clean sneakers, and he had this expression on his face like he was already annoyed before I even started talking. I took a deep breath and began my performance. "Jerome, I'm in some serious trouble, and I need your help." I rubbed my face with my hands, trying to look as stressed as possible. "You know how I've been struggling with money lately, right?" "Well, it got worse. A lot worse." Jerome leaned back in his chair. "How much worse?" "I borrowed money from some guys, thinking I could pay it back quick. But the interest, man, the interest is killing me. They want $50,000, and they want it in 2 weeks, or I let my voice trail off. Jerome stared at me for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Not a sympathetic laugh, not an uncomfortable laugh, but a deep, belly laugh like I'd just told him the funniest joke he'd ever heard. 50,000, he said, wiping his eyes. Marcus, where in the hell do you think I'm gonna get $50,000? And even if I had it, why would I give it to someone who's stupid enough to borrow money from loan sharks? I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I pushed forward. Jerome, these aren't just regular loan sharks. These guys don't play. I'm scared, man. I'm really scared. The laughter stopped. Jerome looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, not concern, not worry, but something that looked almost like disgust. You know what your problem is, Marcus? You're 52 years old and you still think like a child. You think you can make stupid decisions and someone else will always be there to fix it for you. Well, guess what? I worked hard for everything I have. I made smart choices. I saved my money instead of wasting it on lottery tickets and beer. And now you want me to bail you out of a mess you created? He stood up and walked toward the door. Figure it out yourself, little brother. Maybe this will finally teach you how to be a man. The door slammed behind him, and I sat there in my living room, staring at the space where my brother had been. The brother who used to share a bedroom with me, who taught me how to throw a curveball, who promised he'd always have my back no matter what. I pulled out my phone and crossed Jerome's name off the list I'd made. One down. Next was my sister Denise. Denise lives about 20 minutes away in Oak Park with her husband Tony and their teenage son. She works as a nurse at Henry Ford Hospital, pulls long shifts, always talks about how tired she is and how hard it is to make ends meet. But she's got a good heart, always has. When we were kids, Denise was the one who made sure everyone got fed before she ate, the one who gave up her allowance to buy birthday presents for the rest of us. I called her on Sunday evening, after she'd gotten home from her weekend shift. Denise, I hate to bother you when you're tired, but I really need to talk to you about something important. Her voice immediately filled with concern. Marcus? What's wrong? Are you okay? Already, the difference in her reaction gave me hope. I'm okay physically, but, look, can I come over? I don't want to talk about this over the phone. Of course, come on. Tony's got the game on, but we can talk in the kitchen. An hour later, I was sitting at Denise's kitchen table, the same one where we used to do homework together 30 years ago. She made me a sandwich without asking if I was hungry, that's just Denise, and sat down across from me with this worried expression on her face. Talk to me, Marcus. What's going on? I repeated the same story I'd told Jerome, watching her face carefully. When I got to the part about owing $50,000, her eyes widened, but she didn't laugh. When I mentioned the 2-week deadline, she reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Oh my God, Marcus. Why didn't you come to me sooner? For a moment, I felt ashamed of what I was doing. This was my sister, the woman who had held my hand when I was scared of thunderstorms, who had defended me against bullies, who had cried at our grandmother's funeral because she knew how much it would hurt me. But I needed to know. I needed to see how far that love went when it cost something. I was embarrassed, I said. I didn't want anyone to know how bad I messed up. Denise squeezed my hand tighter. Marcus, family doesn't work like that. We don't abandon each other when things get tough. She was quiet for a moment, thinking. $50,000, that's a lot of money. Tony and I, we're barely making it as it is. My hours got cut last month, and we're trying to save for junior's college. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the war between wanting to help and knowing she couldn't afford it. But maybe I can figure something out, she continued. I could take out a loan against the house, or maybe borrow from my 401k. It would hurt, but if it saves you. She trailed off, and I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to come up with money she didn't have to save a brother who didn't need saving. I mean, how sure are you that these guys are serious? She asked. Maybe we could talk to them, work out some kind of payment plan. I shook my head. Denise, these aren't the kind of people you negotiate with. They made it very clear what happens if I don't pay. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. I'm going to help you, she said. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to figure it out. You're my brother, and I love you, and we're going to get through this together. I felt something break inside my chest. This was my sister, my blood, and she was willing to risk her family's financial security to save me from a problem that didn't even exist. I wanted to tell her the truth right then, to end the charade and hug her and tell her how much I loved her for being exactly who I hoped she was. But I didn't. Because I needed to finish the test. I needed to see everyone's true colors before I revealed mine. I crossed Denise's name off my list, but this time I drew a heart next to it instead of an X. 2 down, 4 to go. My oldest son, Marcus Jr., was next. Junior is 28 years old and works in IT for a startup company in downtown Detroit. He's smart, ambitious, and he's always been a little too busy for family gatherings, a little too focused on his career to call his old man just to check in. We have a decent relationship, but it's not close, not like I had hoped it would be when he was born. Junior lives in a trendy loft in Midtown, drives a BMW he can barely afford, and spends his weekends at expensive restaurants and exclusive clubs. He makes good money, but he spends it all trying to keep up with an image of success that's always just out of reach. I called him on Monday evening, knowing he'd be getting home from work. Dad? This is weird, you never call during the week. I know, son. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to talk to you about something serious. There was a pause. Is this about money? Because if it is, I've told you before, I'm not in a position to. Junior, please. Just hear me out. Another pause, then a sigh. Okay, what's going on? I went through the story again, but with Junior I emphasized the danger more than the money. I told him I was scared, that these weren't just creditors but dangerous people who had threatened violence. When I finished, there was silence on the other end of the line for almost 30 seconds. Dad, he finally said, this is exactly the kind of thing I've been worried about. You live in that neighborhood, you work at that shop, you hang around with people who get involved in this kind of stuff. Junior, I didn't choose this. I was desperate, and I made a mistake. Right, but it's always something with you, isn't it? First it was needing help with the truck, then it was the roof repair, now it's loan sharks. When does it end? I felt a familiar sting, the same one I'd felt every time Junior made me feel like a burden, like an embarrassment to his image of success. Son, I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for help from my family. Look, Dad, I feel bad for you, I really do. But $50,000? Do you have any idea how much money that is? That's more than I make in a year after taxes and rent and everything else. And even if I had it, how do I know this won't just happen again? The question hit me like a slap. How do I know this won't just happen again? Like I was some kind of repeat offender, some habitual screw-up who couldn't be trusted with help. Junior, these guys will hurt me if I don't pay. This isn't about making another mistake. This is about staying alive. Then maybe you should go to the police. I can't go to the police. You know that's not how this works. I don't know how any of this works, Dad, because I don't put myself in these situations. His voice was getting colder, more distant. Look, I'm sorry this is happening to you, but I can't fix your problems anymore. I have my own life, my own responsibilities. Maybe this is a wake-up call that you need to make some serious changes. The line went quiet again, and I could picture him in his expensive loft, looking out at the Detroit skyline, probably already thinking about how to end this conversation and get back to his successful life. So that's it? I asked. Your father calls you scared and desperate, and your answer is figure it out yourself? My answer is that I can't save you from every bad decision you make. I learned a long time ago that helping people who won't help themselves is just enabling them to keep making the same mistakes. When he hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. This was my son, my firstborn, the little boy I used to carry on my shoulders, who used to fall asleep on my chest watching TV. The boy I worked double shifts to buy school clothes for, who I taught to drive in the parking lot behind the old Kmart. I crossed his name off the list with an X so hard it nearly tore through the paper. My younger son, David, was a different story entirely. David is 25, works construction, and has been struggling with addiction for the past 3 years. He's been in and out of rehab, in and out of jobs, and in and out of our lives. He's broken promises, stolen money, and lied about things that didn't even matter. But he's also my baby boy, the kid who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when I had to work Christmas morning, who still hugs me like he means it every time I see him. I knew calling David was risky. If he thought I had money, or access to money, it could trigger all the wrong instincts. But if he thought I was in real danger, maybe it would bring out the protective side of him that I knew was still in there somewhere. I called him on Tuesday afternoon, when I figured he'd be getting off his shift. "Dad? What's up?" His voice sounded clear, alert. That was a good sign. David has a different voice when he's using, slower and distant. "David, I need to talk to you about something serious." "Are you somewhere private?" "Yeah, I'm at home." "What's going on?" "You sound weird." I told him the story, but with David I made it more about fear than money. I told him I was scared, that I didn't know what to do, that I felt like I had nowhere to turn. When I finished, David was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that broke my heart. "Dad, are you sure you're not making this up to test me?" The question caught me so off guard that I couldn't speak for a moment. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it wouldn't be the first time someone in this family made up a story to see how I'd react. And this sounds like the kind of thing someone would make up if they wanted to see if I was clean, if I was thinking straight." There was pain in his voice, old pain that I hadn't fully understood until that moment. How many times had David been tested, questioned, doubted? How many times had his family looked at him like he was a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved? "David, I swear to you, this is real. I wouldn't lie about something like this." Another pause. Okay, I believe you." His voice got stronger, more determined. "What do you need me to do?" "I need $50,000, son. I know that's impossible, but, you're right, it's impossible. I don't have $50, let alone 50,000. But that doesn't mean I can't help." "David, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're my father, and if someone wants to hurt you, they're going to have to go through me first." I felt my throat tighten. "Son, these are dangerous people. You can't fight money problems with your fists." "Maybe not, but I can make sure you're not alone while you figure this out." "When do they want the money?" 2 weeks. "Okay, then we have 2 weeks to come up with a plan. Maybe we can't get 50,000, but maybe we can get enough to buy some time. I know some guys who might be able to help, or at least make these guys think twice about messing with you." "David, I don't want you getting involved with dangerous people because of me." "Dad, I've been involved with dangerous people. The difference is, this time it would be for the right reasons." His voice cracked a little. "You never gave up on me, even when everyone else did. Even when I gave you every reason to. So I'm not giving up on you." We talked for another 20 minutes, and David laid out this elaborate plan involving friends of his who could loan money, side jobs we could work together, people he knew who might be able to intimidate my fictional creditors. It was all impossible, but it was also beautiful, because it came from a place of pure love. When we hung up, I sat in my truck outside the gas station where I'd stopped to make the call, and I cried. Not because David couldn't help with money, I had more money than both of us could spend in a lifetime. I cried because my son, my troubled, struggling, addicted son, was the only one willing to risk his own safety to protect me. I drew a heart next to David's name, right next to Denise's. That left my daughter Keisha and my mother. Keisha was in nursing school at Wayne State, working part-time at a clinic downtown while taking classes full-time. She was 26, focused, determined to build a better life for herself than the one she grew up watching me struggle through. We had a good relationship, but like all my kids, she was busy building her own life and didn't have much time for dear old Dad. I called her on Wednesday evening, after I knew she'd be done with classes. "Hi Dad. This is a nice surprise. How are you?" Her voice was warm, genuinely happy to hear from me. That gave me hope and made what I was about to do feel even worse. Well, actually, I'm not doing so great, sweetheart. I need to talk to you about something important." The warmth in her voice immediately shifted to concern. "What's wrong? Are you sick?" "No, baby girl, I'm not sick. But I am in some serious trouble, and I don't know who else to turn to." I went through the story again, and with Keisha I emphasized how ashamed I was, how sorry I was to burden her when she had so much going on with school and work. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Dad, how much do you need?" $50,000. She laughed, but not like Jerome had laughed. This was a bitter, frustrated laugh. "50,000? Dad, I have about $300 in my checking account and a maxed-out credit card. I'm living on ramen noodles and hope." "I know, sweetheart. I know it's impossible. I didn't know who else to call. What about Jerome? What about Junior? They make way more money than I do." The question was like a knife twisting in my chest. I already talked to them. And? I couldn't bring myself to tell her how her uncle and brother had reacted. "They can't help right now." Keisha was quiet again, and I could hear her breathing change. When she spoke again, her voice was different, stronger, more determined. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I can't give you $50,000, but I can give you what I have. And I can figure out how to get more." "Keisha, no. I can't take your school money. Dad, listen to me. You worked 3 jobs to put me through high school. You never missed a parent-teacher conference, never missed a graduation, never missed anything that mattered to me, even when you were exhausted, even when you couldn't afford it. You think I'm going to let some thugs hurt you over money?" She was getting emotional now, and so was I. "I can drop out for a semester, work full-time, maybe get a loan." "Absolutely not. Keisha, your education is the most important, my father is the most important thing," she interrupted. "School will always be there. You won't." We argued for another 10 minutes, with her insisting she was going to find a way to help and me trying to talk her out of sacrificing her future for my fake crisis. Finally, she wore me down. "Fine," I said. "Let me think about it. Maybe there's another way." "There's no other way, Dad. Family takes care of family. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll figure out the details." After we hung up, I added a heart to Keisha's name too. That left my mother. My mother, Dorothy Washington, is 73 years old and lives in a senior living facility in Dearborn. She's been there for 2 years, ever since she had a stroke that left her unable to live independently. I visit her every Sunday, bring her groceries and little gifts, help her with her bills and paperwork. She raised 4 kids by herself after my father left, worked as a housekeeper at the Renaissance Center for 30 years, and never complained about how hard it was. My mother is also the most judgmental person I've ever known. Nothing I've ever done has been good enough for Dorothy Washington. Not my job, not my wife when I was married, not the way I've raised my kids, not the house I live in, not the clothes I wear, not the choices I've made. She has an opinion about everything, and it's usually negative. But she's my mother, and some part of me has never stopped hoping that someday she'll be proud of me. I called her on Thursday evening, during her dinner time. "Marcus? Why are you calling? You know I eat at 6. "I'm sorry, Mama. I know it's dinner time, but I really need to talk to you about something urgent." "Urgent? What now? Did you lose another job?" "No, Mama, I still have my job. But I'm in some serious trouble, and I need your help." I heard her sigh deeply. Lord have mercy. What did you do now? The words hit me like they always did, carrying 30 years of disappointment and frustration. What did you do now, Marcus? What mess did you make this time, Marcus? Why can't you be more like your brother, Marcus? I told her the story, and as I talked, I could hear her making those little sounds she makes when she's annoyed, clicking her tongue, sighing, muttering under her breath. When I finished, there was a long silence. $50,000, she finally said. Yes, ma'am. Marcus Jerome Washington, you are 52 years old. 52 years old, and you're calling your 73-year-old mother asking for $50,000 because you borrowed money from criminals. Mama, I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. You didn't know what else to do? How about get a second job? How about stop wasting money on lottery tickets and beer? How about make responsible choices like your brother Jerome? There it was. Like always, everything came back to Jerome. Mama, please. These people aren't going to wait for me to get a second job. They want their money in 2 weeks, or they're going to hurt me. Well, maybe that's what it takes. Maybe you need to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying that I have spent 50 years cleaning up your messes, Marcus. 50 years. When you got suspended from school, who had to take off work to meet with the principal? When you got that girl pregnant in high school, who helped you figure out what to do? When your marriage fell apart, who let you move back home with your kids? When you couldn't make your house payments, who gave you my mother's house? Each question was like a punch to the gut, not because they weren't true, but because of how she said them. Like every act of love had been a burden, every moment of help had been a sacrifice she resented. Mama, I never asked you to, you never asked, but you always needed, didn't you? And now you're 52 years old, calling me from that little house I gave you, asking me to fix another problem you created. So you won't help me? She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. Marcus, I live on Social Security and a small pension. I have maybe $15,000 in savings, money I need for my medical bills and my care. Even if I had $50,000, I wouldn't give it to you. Why? Because you would just waste it, like you've wasted everything else I've ever given you. Because helping you would just enable you to keep making the same stupid choices. And because honestly, Marcus, I'm tired of pretending that you're ever going to change. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there, holding the phone, trying to process what my mother had just said to me. You would let them hurt me? I would let you face the consequences of your choices. Maybe if you had to face them more often, you'd make better ones. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my truck outside the senior center for 2 hours after that call, not crying, not angry, just empty. My mother, the woman who had given birth to me, who had raised me, who I had spent my entire life trying to make proud, had just told me that she thought I deserved whatever happened to me. I crossed her name off the list with an X so dark and heavy it went through 3 pages. But there was one more person I hadn't tested yet. One more person whose reaction would either restore my faith in family or destroy it completely. My 19-year-old niece, Sarah, Denise's daughter. Sarah was in her sophomore year at the University of Michigan, studying pre-med. She was brilliant, ambitious, and kind in a way that reminded me of her mother at that age. She worked part-time at a campus bookstore and was always worried about money, tuition, books, rent, food. Every dollar mattered to her because she knew how hard her parents worked to keep her in school. I called her on Friday evening, when I knew she'd be done with classes and work. Uncle Marcus. Hi. This is such a good surprise. Her voice was bright and happy, the way it always was when we talked. Sarah was one of the few people in my family who always seemed genuinely glad to hear from me. Hey, baby girl. How's school going? Oh, you know, the usual. Too much work, not enough time, definitely not enough money. She laughed. But I'm surviving. How are you doing? I took a deep breath. Actually, Sarah, that's kind of why I'm calling. I'm in some trouble, and I don't really know who else to turn to. The happiness in her voice immediately shifted to concern. What kind of trouble? Are you okay? I went through the story one more time, but with Sarah I made it clear that I wasn't expecting her to solve the problem. I told her I just needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge me for the mistakes I'd made. Uncle Marcus, this is terrifying. $50,000. She paused. I don't have that kind of money. I mean, I have about $3,000 in my savings account from working at the bookstore, but that's supposed to be for next semester's books and rent. My heart started pounding. I hadn't expected her to even consider helping. Sarah, sweetheart, I wasn't calling to ask you for money. You're in school, you need every penny you have. But Uncle Marcus, if these people are really going to hurt you. Her voice cracked. Look, $3,000 isn't $50,000, but if it helps somehow, if it buys you some time to figure something else out, then take it. Please. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart. This 19-year-old girl, who had to count every dollar, who worked nights and weekends just to stay in school, was willing to give me her entire savings to protect me from a danger that didn't even exist. Sarah, no. Absolutely not. That's your future you're talking about. My future doesn't matter if something happens to you, she said, getting emotional. Uncle Marcus, you're the only person in this family who ever believed in me. When everyone else said I was too young for pre-med, you told me I could do anything. When I was scared about college, you drove me to campus and helped me move into my dorm. You never missed my birthday, never forgot to ask about my grades, never made me feel like I was bothering you. She was crying now, and so was I. You matter to me, Uncle Marcus. You matter more than money, more than school, more than anything. So yes, I'm going to help you, and I don't want to hear any arguments about it. I sat there in stunned silence, holding the phone, overwhelmed by the love in her voice. Here was my 19-year-old niece, offering her future to save my life, while my own sons had turned their backs on me. I'll drive down. Tomorrow, she continued. I'll bring the money, and we'll figure out what to do next together. You're not going through this alone. After we hung up, I sat in my truck and wept like I hadn't wept since I was a child. Not just because Sarah had offered to help, but because of what the past week had revealed about my family, about love, about who people really are when everything is on the line. Out of 6 family members I had tested, only 3 had been willing to help: Denise, David, and Sarah. My brother Jerome had laughed at me. My son Marcus Jr. had lectured me about personal responsibility. My own mother had told me I deserved whatever happened to me. But the 3 who had stepped up, a struggling nurse, a recovering addict, and a college student, they had been willing to sacrifice everything for me. They had proven that love isn't about how much money you have or how successful you are. It's about showing up when someone needs you, even when it costs you something. As I drove home that night, I realized my test was complete. I knew exactly who my real family was, and I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. The $162 million burning a hole in my secret bank account was about to change everything, but not in the way anyone expected. Because now it was time for the second phase of my plan, and this phase wasn't about testing love. It was about testing just how far greed could push people, and how sweet revenge could taste when you had unlimited resources to make it perfect. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The test was over. I knew exactly who deserved my love and who deserved something else entirely. It was time to become the puppet master of my own family's fate, and I had $162 million to make it happen. But first, I had to cancel the fake crisis. I called Sarah back and told her I'd found another solution, that she shouldn't drive down. The relief in her voice when I told her to keep her money for school almost made me confess everything right then. Almost. My first real stop was a private wealth management firm in downtown Detroit, the kind of place where they serve you coffee in china cups and call you sir even when you're wearing work boots. I walked in looking like I'd just come from under a car hood, which I had, and asked to speak with someone about managing a large inheritance. The young banker who met with me clearly thought I was wasting his time until I showed him the lottery documents and bank statements. His entire demeanor shifted in seconds. Suddenly I wasn't just Marcus the mechanic, I was Mr. Washington, valued client. I transferred money into several different accounts under different names and business entities, perfectly legal, all properly documented, but untraceable to Marcus Washington the mechanic. Then I hired a private investigator, a sharp woman named Lisa Chen who specialized in financial backgrounds and family disputes. She'd worked for divorce lawyers and inheritance cases, she told me. She'd seen what money could do to families. Within 3 days, she had detailed reports on every member of my family, their debts, their dreams, their vulnerabilities, their secrets. The information was like having a roadmap to everyone's soul. Jerome owed $47,000 on credit cards and was 3 months behind on his mortgage despite his city job. He'd been living beyond his means for years, trying to keep up appearances. Junior was drowning in student loans and car payments, his BMW lease alone costing more than most people's rent. He was living paycheck to paycheck despite his fancy lifestyle, borrowing money to maintain an image of success. My mother had been lying about her finances. She actually had over $80,000 in savings, money she'd hidden from all of us over the years. She'd been playing poor to avoid family members asking for help. But the people who had shown me love were in real trouble. Denise was working double shifts at the hospital to pay for her son's diabetes medication and insulin supplies, and they were about to lose their house to foreclosure. She'd been hiding the severity of their situation from everyone, too proud to ask for help. David was clean and had been for 4 months, but he was barely surviving, sleeping on a friend's couch and picking up day labor jobs when he could find them. And Sarah was eating 1 meal a day to stretch her grocery budget, had lost 15 pounds since the semester started, and was considering dropping out because she couldn't afford both tuition and food. That's when I designed my revenge, and my rewards. It would be a chess game played with real lives, and I would be the only one who knew the rules. I started with anonymous gifts to those who had shown me love. Sarah found an envelope with $50,000 cash taped under her dorm room door one Tuesday morning, along with a typed note saying her kindness to a struggling family member had been noticed by someone who wanted to help her succeed. The note was signed "A friend who believes in second chances." Denise came home from a brutal 12-hour shift to find a certified letter saying her mortgage had been mysteriously paid off by a grateful former patient who had wanted to help a nurse who'd shown extraordinary compassion during their recovery. The letter mentioned specific details about her kindness that only someone who'd been watching her work could know, details I'd gathered by having Lisa observe her at the hospital. David received a phone call offering him a foreman position at a construction company that paid twice the going rate, with full benefits and a company truck. The company was real. I'd bought a controlling interest in it through a shell corporation, but David never knew his new boss was actually his father. I watched from a distance as the 3 people who had loved me unconditionally suddenly found their lives getting easier, their dreams becoming possible, their struggles lifting like fog in the morning sun. But for the others, I had something much more elaborate planned. Jerome was first, and his downfall was almost too easy. I discovered through Lisa's investigation that he'd been cutting corners on building inspections for years, taking cash payments from contractors to approve buildings that shouldn't have passed safety codes. It was corruption that put people's lives at risk, and it made what I was about to do feel less like revenge and more like justice. I had evidence compiled, photographs, recorded conversations that Lisa's contacts had obtained, financial records showing suspicious deposits, and sent it all anonymously to his supervisor at the city building department, the local news stations, and the FBI's public corruption unit. Within a week, Jerome was fired and facing federal criminal charges. His house went into foreclosure proceedings. His wife, discovering the extent of his debts and illegal activities, filed for divorce and moved back in with her mother. But here's the beautiful part: while Jerome was falling apart publicly, I was secretly and anonymously paying for all his legal fees through a legal aid fund for public servants facing false accusations. I was covering his mortgage payments through a mysterious benefactor who believed in his innocence. He was living through absolute hell emotionally and socially, but mysteriously, he wasn't losing everything. The bills kept getting paid by someone, somewhere, and he couldn't figure out who or why. The paranoia was eating him alive. He started seeing conspiracies everywhere, convinced that someone was both destroying his life and saving it simultaneously. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't understand the pattern. It was psychological warfare with unlimited funding. Junior was next, and his destruction required more finesse. I bought the building where his startup company leased office space and had my property management company triple the rent with 30 days' notice. His company couldn't afford it and was forced to close. But then mysterious investors started reaching out, offering him new opportunities that seemed perfect, tech startups that needed someone with his exact skills, venture capital firms interested in his ideas, consulting gigs that paid incredible money. Every opportunity would go through weeks of negotiations, contracts would be drawn up, start dates would be set, and then at the last possible minute, something would go wrong. The startup would suddenly run out of funding. The venture capital firm would change direction. The consulting contract would be canceled due to budget restructuring. Junior was trapped in a cycle of hope and crushing disappointment that repeated every few weeks. He'd get excited, start making plans, tell people about his new opportunity, and then have to explain why it fell through again. His confidence was being systematically destroyed, and his reputation in the tech community was suffering because people started to think he was lying about all these amazing opportunities that never materialized. What Junior didn't know was that I owned pieces of all these companies, or had business relationships with their real investors, and every opportunity was real until I made a phone call to end it. My mother was the most delicious revenge of all, because her downfall came through the very thing she prized most, her independence and her hidden savings. I hired a team of professional actors to play social workers who randomly selected her senior living facility for a comprehensive audit of resident care and safety standards. They found violations that required expensive modifications to her apartment, a new bathroom for disability compliance, updated electrical systems for safety, specialized medical equipment rental for residents of her age demographic. Her savings started draining fast, a few thousand here, a few thousand there, all for mandatory improvements that were actually completely unnecessary but looked official on paper. But every time she was about to be truly desperate, anonymous donations would appear in her account, just enough to keep her from comfort but not enough to feel secure. She started receiving bills for services she'd never requested, late payment notices for things she thought she'd already paid, insurance claims that were mysteriously denied and required expensive appeals. It was bureaucratic torture designed to make her feel confused, helpless, and constantly worried about money. The beautiful thing was watching them all try to figure out what was happening. Jerome convinced himself he was cursed, that someone from his past was using voodoo or black magic to destroy his life while keeping him barely afloat. Junior thought competitors were sabotaging him, hired a private investigator to figure out who was behind the pattern of failed opportunities. My mother believed God was testing her faith, started going to church 3 times a week and tithing money she couldn't afford to lose. But the real masterpiece was watching them turn on each other. They started calling each other constantly, comparing stories, getting paranoid and suspicious. Jerome accused Junior of somehow orchestrating his downfall out of jealousy over their mother's favoritism. Junior blamed Jerome for bringing some kind of family curse down on all of them. My mother started accusing both of them of stealing from her, convinced that one of her sons was behind her mysterious financial problems. The family group text that Denise had started years ago to coordinate holidays and birthdays became a war zone. Jerome would send long, rambling messages about government conspiracies. Junior would respond with angry accusations about family loyalty. My mother would chime in with Bible verses about children honoring their parents and complaints about ungrateful sons. Meanwhile, Denise was trying to play peacemaker, not understanding why her family was suddenly falling apart. David stayed out of it completely, his new job kept him busy and focused. Sarah was too busy excelling in her studies with her mysterious scholarship to get involved in family drama. And me? I kept going to work every day at Rodriguez Auto Shop, playing the same struggling mechanic, listening to my coworkers complain about their problems while I secretly controlled the fate of 6 people with a few phone calls and wire transfers. I started dropping little hints to my coworkers about the weird stuff happening in my family. Man, my brother's going through some rough times, I'd say, while changing someone's oil. Lost his job, wife left him, but somehow his bills keep getting paid. Strangest thing. Or I'd mention how my son kept getting these amazing job opportunities that would fall through. It's like someone's playing games with him, I'd say, shaking my head in fake confusion. The guys at the shop started joking that the Washington family was cursed. If they only knew how right they were, and who was doing the cursing. The climax came 8 months later, at my mother's 74th birthday party, an event I had carefully orchestrated through Denise, who thought it would be nice to bring the family together during these difficult times everyone was mysteriously having. I spent weeks planning every detail. I rented the VFW Hall in Dearborn where my mother had celebrated her 60th birthday, the same place where she'd announced her retirement, where our family had gathered for so many occasions over the years. I made sure the decorations were exactly like the ones from her 60th, the same colors, the same flowers, even the same cake from the same bakery. I walked into that hall carrying a leather briefcase, wearing the same greasy work clothes I'd worn for months, the same Red Wing boots with holes in the toes, the same flannel shirt with permanent oil stains. Jerome looked like he'd aged 20 years, thin and hollow-eyed, constantly looking over his shoulder like he expected someone to jump out at him. Junior was bitter and defeated, wearing a cheap suit that looked like he'd bought it at a thrift store, his BMW long since repossessed. My mother looked frail and worried, constantly checking her purse like she was afraid her wallet might disappear. But Denise looked radiant, her son's medical bills weren't crushing them anymore, she'd been able to cut back to regular shifts, and the stress lines around her eyes had softened. David looked healthy and confident, steady work and a steady paycheck had given him purpose and hope. And Sarah was absolutely glowing, she'd made Dean's List, gotten into an accelerated program that would let her graduate early, and had been accepted to 3 different medical schools with full scholarships. I waited until everyone was seated, until my mother had blown out her candles while complaining about the cost of the cake, until the awkward small talk had died down and the room was filled with the kind of tense silence that comes when family members are barely tolerating each other's presence. Then I stood up, walked to the front of the room, and opened my briefcase. Inside were copies of bank statements, lottery documents, and 3 checks made out to cash, one for $5 million, one for $2 million, and one for $10 million. I have something to tell all of you, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. 8 months ago, I won $162 million in the Powerball lottery. And I've been watching what each of you would do if you thought I needed your help. The silence was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop. Someone's fork clinked against a plate, and it sounded like a gunshot. Jerome, I said, looking directly at my brother, whose mouth was hanging open like he'd forgotten how to close it, when I told you I needed $50,000 to save my life, you laughed at me. You called me stupid. You said I needed to learn to be a man, that I thought like a child. Jerome's face went from white to gray to green. His hands started shaking. Marcus, I didn't know, if I had known it was real. Junior, I continued, turning to my son, who was staring at me like I'd grown a second head, you told me you couldn't keep fixing my problems. You said helping me would just enable more bad decisions. You asked how you could know this wouldn't happen again. Junior started to stand up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Dad, wait, let me explain. If I had known you really won the lottery, Mama, I said, looking at the woman who had raised me, who was now gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles were white, you told me I deserved whatever happened to me. You said you were tired of pretending I would ever change. You said helping me would just be throwing good money after bad. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. For the first time in my life, Dorothy Washington was speechless. But Denise, I said, turning to my sister with a smile that felt like sunshine breaking through storm clouds, you were willing to mortgage your house to save me. You were ready to risk your family's financial security because you believed family doesn't abandon each other when things get tough. I pulled out the first check and placed it on the table in front of her. David, You were ready to risk your own safety to protect me. You offered to stand between me and danger, even though you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. The second check went down in front of my son, who was staring at it like it might disappear if he blinked. And Sarah, sweet Sarah, I said, looking at my niece, who had tears streaming down her face, you offered me your entire future without hesitation. You were willing to drop out of school, to sacrifice everything you'd worked for, because you believed I mattered more than money. The third check joined the others on the table. Denise, your mortgage isn't just paid off, here's $5 million to make sure you and your family never worry about money again, and so you can help other families the way you wanted to help me. David, here's $2 million to start your own construction company, hire people who need second chances the way you needed one. Sarah, here's $10 million for medical school and whatever dreams come after, because the world needs doctors with your heart. The room erupted like a volcano. Jerome started shouting about how it wasn't fair, how he would have helped if he'd known it was real, how I'd tricked him. Junior was demanding to know why he was being punished for being practical, why he was supposed to know the difference between a real crisis and a fake one. My mother was crying and reaching for me, saying she'd made a terrible mistake, that she'd been scared and confused. But I wasn't done. I had spent 8 months planning this moment, and I was going to savor every second of it. For the past 8 months, I said, raising my voice over the chaos until everyone fell silent again, I've been the puppet master of all your lives. Jerome, I'm the one who exposed your corruption, and I'm the one who kept you from losing everything. Every legal bill that got paid, every mortgage payment that mysteriously appeared, that was me. Jerome's face went through about 6 different expressions in the span of 10 seconds. Junior, I'm the one who destroyed your company, and I'm the one who kept dangling new opportunities in front of you, just to watch you get your hopes up and have them crushed again. Every failed deal, every opportunity that vanished at the last minute, I orchestrated all of it. Junior's mouth was moving, but no sound was coming out. Mama, I'm the one who drained your savings with fake violations and unnecessary modifications, and I'm the one who kept you afloat with anonymous donations. Every confusing bill, every mysterious payment, every moment of worry about money, that was all me. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I wanted you to know what it felt like to need help and not get it. I wanted you to experience the fear and desperation I felt when I thought I was alone in the world. But I also wanted to understand something about myself, whether I was the kind of person who used power to heal or to hurt, whether having unlimited resources would make me generous or vindictive. I closed the briefcase and looked around the room one last time, taking in every face, every expression, every tear. I've learned everything I needed to know. About all of you, and about me. The money didn't change who any of us are, it just revealed who we've always been. It showed me that some people love conditionally, and others love without limits. It showed me that blood doesn't make family, and that sometimes the people closest to you are actually strangers. I started walking toward the door, but stopped and turned back one final time. Jerome, Jr., Mama, you'll never see another penny from me. But you'll also never have to worry about me interfering in your lives again. The mysterious problems you've been having will stop. The anonymous help will stop. What you do from here, how you rebuild, who you become, that's entirely up to you. Jerome jumped up from his chair. Marcus, you can't just leave it like this. We're family. No, I said quietly, we're relatives. There's a difference. I looked at Denise, David, and Sarah one last time. And you three, you're my real family. The only family I need. Tomorrow we'll sit down and figure out how to use this money to help not just yourselves, but other people who need what you needed, hope, second chances, and someone who believes in them. As I walked out of that VFW hall, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me, shouting and crying and accusations flying in every direction. Jerome was demanding to know if I'd really orchestrated his arrest. Junior was asking if his failed opportunities would start working out now. My mother was wailing about forgiveness and second chances. But for the first time in 8 months, I felt peace. The test was over. The revenge was complete. And I finally knew the difference between people who love you and people who love what you can do for them. The $162 million had taught me the most expensive lesson of my life: family isn't about blood, and love isn't about obligation. Money doesn't corrupt people, it reveals them. Sometimes the people who share your DNA are strangers, and sometimes strangers become the family you choose. I drove home to my grandmother's house, the same house I'd kept all this time, because it reminded me where I came from and who I really was beneath all the money. I sat in her old rocking chair on the front porch, looking out at the neighborhood where I'd grown up, and I finally felt like I could breathe again. Tomorrow I would start the rest of my life, surrounded by people who had proven their love was real, and free from people who had proven their love came with conditions and price tags. Tomorrow I would figure out how to use the remaining millions to help other families, other people who were struggling, other kids who needed to believe that someone cared about them. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in the quiet and remember what my grandmother used to tell me when I was small and the world felt too big and scary: baby, love isn't something you earn or deserve. Real love just is. And when you find people who love you just because you exist, you hold on to them tight and you love them back the same way. The lottery ticket had cost me $2. Learning the truth about my family had cost me months of planning and millions of dollars in psychological warfare. But knowing who really loved me, knowing who my real family was, knowing that I could choose to use power to heal instead of hurt, that knowledge was worth more than all the money in the world. Some people say money can't buy happiness. They're wrong. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy truth. And sometimes, the truth is the most valuable thing you can own. Two years have passed since that explosive birthday party at the VFW hall, and my life has settled into something I never thought possible: genuine peace. I still live in my grandmother's house on the east side of Detroit, though I've made some improvements. Nothing flashy, nothing that screams money, just the kind of updates that make a home more comfortable. New windows, better insulation, a renovated kitchen where I actually cook now instead of living on microwave dinners and takeout. The neighborhood kids still wave to me when I'm working in the yard, and Mrs. Patterson next door still brings me banana bread every Sunday after church. To them, I'm still just Marcus, the mechanic who won some money and decided to fix up his grandmother's old house. They don't know about the $80 million I still have sitting in investment accounts, growing steadily while I figure out the best ways to help people who need it most. I kept my job at Rodriguez Auto Shop for 8 more months after the birthday party revelation. Not because I needed the money, but because I needed the normalcy, the routine, the satisfaction of fixing things with my hands. My coworkers knew something had changed. I was calmer, more patient, quicker to buy lunch for everyone or help out when someone was short on their bills. When I finally told them I was retiring early thanks to some investments that paid off, they threw me a party with a sheet cake from the grocery store and genuine tears from guys who'd worked alongside me for 15 years. Denise used her $5 million wisely, just like I knew she would. She cut back to part-time at the hospital and started a non-profit organization that helps families navigate the medical system when they have children with chronic illnesses. She provides everything from financial assistance for medications to emotional support for parents who feel lost and overwhelmed. Her own experience with her son's diabetes taught her that sometimes families need more than just money. They need someone who understands their fear and exhaustion. She named the organization Second Chances Health, and it's already helped over 200 families in the Detroit area. David took his $2 million and did exactly what I hoped he would. He started a construction company called Rebuild Foundations, but it's not your typical contractor business. David specifically hires people in recovery, people with criminal records, people who need second chances. He pays them well, provides health insurance, and creates a work environment where people can rebuild their lives alongside the buildings they construct. His crew has renovated 3 homeless shelters, built a new wing for a drug treatment center, and constructed affordable housing for families transitioning out of poverty. David's been clean for 3 years now, and he carries himself with a pride I haven't seen since he was a little boy. Sarah is in her 3rd year of medical school at Johns Hopkins, where her $10 million scholarship foundation supports not just her education but also creates opportunities for other students from low-income families to pursue medical careers. She's maintained her 4.0 GPA while also volunteering at free clinics in Baltimore every weekend. Sarah wants to specialize in family medicine and return to Detroit to serve the communities she grew up around. She calls me every Sunday, and our conversations are filled with her excitement about her studies, her plans for the future, and her gratitude for the opportunity to help people heal. She's already talking about expanding the scholarship program to include nursing school and medical technology training. The three of them, Denise, David, and Sarah, have become the family I always dreamed of having. We have dinner together every month, sometimes at my house, sometimes at Denise's. We celebrate birthdays and holidays, share our successes and struggles, and support each other through life's inevitable challenges. But more than that, we've become partners in using our resources to make a real difference in people's lives. Every major decision about charitable giving, every new project we fund, every person we help, we discuss it all together. They've taught me that having money is meaningless unless you use it to create positive change in the world. As for the other three, Jerome, Jr., and my mother, their lives took the trajectories I expected, though perhaps not the ones they deserved. Jerome eventually pleaded guilty to the corruption charges and served 18 months in federal prison. When he was released, he moved to Florida and got a job as a maintenance supervisor at a small apartment complex. His ex-wife remarried and took his children with her to California. Jerome sends me a Christmas card every year with a brief note apologizing for how he treated me, but I haven't responded to any of them. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Junior struggled for 2 years after his business failed, working a series of temporary IT jobs that barely paid his bills. Eventually, he swallowed his pride and took a permanent position with a mid-sized company in Grand Rapids. He's doing well financially now, has a steady girlfriend, and seems to be building a more stable life. He's reached out a few times through Denise, asking if we could talk, if there was any way to repair our relationship. I think about it sometimes, especially late at night when I'm sitting on my grandmother's porch. Maybe someday we'll have that conversation, but not yet. The wound is still too fresh, and I'm still too aware of how quickly he abandoned me when he thought I had nothing to offer. My mother's story is the most complicated of all. After her savings were depleted by my manufacture crisis, she had to move to a less expensive assisted living facility. Her pride was shattered, her sense of security destroyed, and for the first time in her life, she had to depend on others for help. Denise stepped in, as I knew she would, helping with expenses and visiting regularly. But the most surprising development came 6 months ago, when my mother began volunteering at a food bank near her new residence. According to Denise, she works there 4 days a week, helping to sort donations and serve meals to families in need. The woman who once told me I deserved whatever hardship came my way now spends her time helping people who are facing their own hardships. Denise says our mother has changed, that losing her financial security taught her empathy she never had before. She's apparently become one of the most beloved volunteers at the food bank, known for her gentle way with children and her ability to make people feel dignified even when they're asking for help. When Denise told me this, I felt something I didn't expect, not forgiveness, exactly, but a kind of sad recognition that maybe my mother had to lose everything she thought mattered to find out what actually did. But here's what I've learned in these 2 years of reflection and growth: revenge, even when it's perfectly executed, doesn't heal you the way you think it will. Yes, I felt satisfied when I revealed the truth at that birthday party. Yes, there was justice in showing Jerome, Jr., and my mother exactly how their conditional love felt when you were on the receiving end. But the real healing, the real peace, came from what happened afterward, from building something positive with the people who had shown me genuine love, from using my resources to help others, from choosing to be the kind of person who lifts people up rather than tears them down. The $162 million lottery win changed my life, but not in the way most people would expect. It didn't buy me happiness. Happiness came from discovering who my real family was and learning how to love without conditions. It didn't solve all my problems, it revealed new ones, deeper ones, questions about responsibility and purpose and how to live meaningfully when you have more resources than you could ever need. What the money did was give me the ultimate truth serum, a way to see people's hearts clearly, without the filters of pretense or social expectation. If you're listening to this story and you're thinking about your own family, your own relationships, ask yourself this question: if you had nothing, no money, no success, no ability to do anything for the people in your life except love them, who would still be there? Those are your people. Those are the ones worth holding on to, worth sacrificing for, worth building a life around. And if you discover that some of the people you thought were family aren't actually on that list, don't waste time trying to change them or convince them to love you differently. Some people are only capable of conditional love, and that's their limitation, not your failure. Thank you for staying with me through this long, complicated story about money and family and the sometimes ugly truth about human nature. I hope it's given you something to think about, maybe inspired you to look at your own relationships with clearer eyes. Remember that love, real love, doesn't come with a price tag or a list of requirements. It just is. And when you find people who love you that way, hold on to them tight, because they're the real treasure, worth more than all the lottery jackpots in the world.